Hello everybody, welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Rocky and I are here today to talk about DC All In. At the end, I guess we'll declare whether we're all in on DC or not. Huge news. I feel like this announcement came out today to get ahead of the noise of San Diego, but there's going to be a lot more details coming out at San Diego. So if you didn't hear the announcement, we're going to play the video here. And we'll pause it periodically to give our thoughts on some of the things that are being said. We'll also talk about some of the rumors that are bouncing around about which writers are on which titles and what have you. Again, I think a lot of that will come in San Diego. Things will be announced. We'll see art and that sort of thing. So let me go ahead and play the video, kick it off in case you didn't get to hear the announcement. And then, yeah, we'll give our thoughts on what Joshua Williamson and Scott Snyder have to say.
Hey everybody, my name is Joshua Williamson, and I'm here to talk to you about an exciting initiative coming to DC Comics in October. But I'm doing it with an old friend, Scott Snyder.
Hey man, God, you look so fancy. You're freaking me out.
Well, this is my show, and you're my guest, right? I'm the host, you're my guest, so we're here to talk about comic books, so let's talk to everybody about All In.
This is something we've been working on forever. We've been working on it for a couple years behind the scenes with some incredible creators, and we're just so excited to bring it to you. So what is All In? All In is the biggest initiative that DC has done in the better part of a decade, honestly. Josh and I have both been really lucky over the years at DC to be a part of a couple initiatives. The difference between sort of an initiative and an event, also, an event is like a big blockbuster story that creates a couple open spaces. But an initiative is a moment when the entire company comes together to kind of create a moment, like a seismic tectonic moment at the company that sort of redefines it and tells one big story that invites everybody in to celebrate comics at once. And that's sort of what All In is going to be. Every initiative has its purpose, and for us, All In is a rallying cry.
So one of the things I want to mention, a couple things. He said they've been working on it for 4 years. Good that they're prepared, because this does feel like the new 52 more than anything else, except that they're not starting over. They're not throwing out all the past. It's not a retcon. It's not a reboot. But in terms of preparation, it feels like the most preparation they've done for everything since New 52. So that gives me hope that this is going to be good. On the other hand, we have talked about how DC might be better than Marvel books right now. At least they are, in my opinion. Just look at the Eisner nominations. I think that bears it out. But that's not to say that they've been doing a great job. So I do kind of wonder, and it's such a tough thing, right? Like, you're working forward in time. Are you neglecting the current line and what have you? Not that Scott's been working on current stuff, but it does feel like they really are trying to improve, and that gives me a little bit of hope. Any thoughts on that, Rocky?
Yeah, well, Scott Snyder also called it the greatest jumping on point. And I think that tells me that, frankly, I don't care if they've been preparing this for the last 4 years or thereabouts. Frankly, I think what I choose to focus on is his clearly the inference in his words, and he goes on to later say it, that this is a great jumping on point. And if whether you're a longtime fan, but especially a new fans, this is what you want, and I want this because you and I are DC fans, but frankly, I do want change in the DC universe. I want different stories, and I want these characters to feel different, and I want the stories to be different, and frankly, a better type and kind of story, and that's what I hope we get. So when he talks about jumping on point and just this being like something that they've really been working on to attract fans, I really hope that's what it means, because it's very obvious, given the success of the competition on their Ultimate line, that if DC does this right, I won't take issue with the fact that I don't feel they've been preparing for this for 4 years. If they have, I would have liked to have seen some indication that the quality of their mainstream line would have shown some improvement, and that's clearly not the case. So I'm hoping that, well, clearly, I guess the reason why we don't have top-name writers on a lot of the DC titles now is because they've been hidden away in the Arctic for the last 4 years working on this stuff. Anyways, I'm just happy. I'm happy. I'm all in for this already, and we're not even,
You spoiled it. We were going to wait till the end to say whether we were all in. I have other things to add, but I'll wait till they get to that point in the video. But what I will say is, I think when Scott says they've been working on it, they may have started 4 years ago. He hasn't been working on DC titles, so he and Joshua Williamson probably building things out. I don't think every writer or whatever. It's probably been a much shorter time. But anyway, let's get back to the video.
All In is about reminding everybody that this medium, that comics, is where the biggest stories are told. It's where the characters are reborn, renewed, where the biggest legacy storytelling happens over.
I'm recording.
It's the greatest continuing story in the world.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've always talked about the last few years is that whenever somebody tries to do an initiative, they always either try to do something brand new with new stuff, or they try to do stuff that always embraces the classic. And one of the conversations that Scott and I were having the last few years was like, how do we do both? How do we do a new story that introduces all of these pieces of like brand new stuff, but really elevates all these classic pieces that we really love?
It starts with story. For us, like every great initiative has a character, has a sensibility, but it's a story. It's about creating something that opens up opportunity for creators to come in, do stories that they want to do in the best way and the biggest way possible. Again, an initiative like this, like All In, is about inviting everybody in, all the existing creators, some new creators, everything, to tell their best stories and to begin them all at one point. The idea is to create the greatest jumping on point for you guys in many, many, many years, where DC will be starting all kinds of books, like brand new books in your continuing series, the series that you love. There is no reboot, there is no retcon, but they will have new story arcs beginning in October. Everything begins there, and it all starts with the All In #1 special.
So let's talk about that, the jumping on point. You mentioned it already. Here's my thoughts on that, right? Like, one of the best ways to sell a comic, and you know this, Rocky, is word of mouth, right? Like, comic fans know other comic fans. When something's good, we talk about it. We get excited about it. We put it out on our social media. We want other people to read it and enjoy it so we can talk about it with them. So this happened with the New 52. I think it's part of the reason the New 52 at first was doing very well, because you got everybody on at the same time. Everybody got onto the train at the starting point, right? So we all could talk about it at the same time, as opposed to, a few people jumping on here or there, whatever. And the comics do it all the time. They talk about, hey, here's a new jumping on point. Here's a place where you can start. The other thing is, what's happened in recent years, especially with Marvel constantly rebooting, wanting all these jumping on points, it's also a jumping off point if people are tired of spending the money or the quality's not there. So, to go back to what Scott was saying about how it's got to be good story. It's got to be great stories, really. And he'll get into this a little bit more in a little bit. But the one thing, I'll mention it now, that way when he talks about it, you can kind of see what I'm saying. He talks about pulling it all together, right? And in a way, it's sort of like DC wanting to have its cake and eat it too, which is kind of a common theme over there. But at least they have learned from the past. One of the reasons New 52 failed is because they threw the baby out with the bathwater. Dan Didio, Jim Lee admitted as much on a panel at San Diego Comic-Con. The legacy feel, the classic feel of DC, by getting rid of all the past continuity when they started the New 52, DC lost a lot of what made it special. So they're not making that mistake. It's not a reboot. It's not a retcon. Everything that came before has counted. But you and I have both been a little critical when they did that recently. If everything counts and everything's supposed to be special, then nothing's special. So you do need some guardrails on it. But be that as it may, if they tell good stories, it will work. It 100% will work. But by pulling everything together, it means, hey, I can read these couple absolute titles. I can read this over here. They might not directly connect to each other right now, but maybe there's an event or a crossover down the road, like they used to do those JLA Justice Society crossovers once a year, right? Earth 1, Earth 2. That's what we're talking about here. Again, a classic DC feel. That's what's interesting to me when you talk about being all in and everything counts. Something that it's a jumping on point. If you don't know anything about DC or you want to read a more modern take on the characters, it sounds like the Absolute line is going to be for you. You don't have to read any of the main universe titles, but you can. And there will be some connective tissue in some way. So, thoughts on that?
The best stories always rise to the top. And I think that there's probably a general consensus and almost an assumption, and it might be a false assumption. The assumption is that the all-in DC stories are going to be better. because they're written by the bigger names. You never know. Maybe some of the mainstream stories in the mainstream series, as they continue, even they'll be more accessible and starting, I guess, new theoretically, they might be really good too. We're getting the best of both worlds here. In theory, this should work. Of course, we comic book readers are a cynical lot, and we know that there's often a difference between the editorial theory versus the comic book reading reality. And in any event, I'm hopeful here that we're going to get the best of both worlds. If the best stories in the All-In DC universe or something that really catches on. If a writer wants to do something really outside the box, well, we know what universe they'll tell it in. If they want to do something more mainstream, they'll have that avenue as well. And so regardless of which is the best story, readers, we will benefit from it. And what I really like is that both will be existing in the DC universe, just in different universes, which is frankly in keeping with the multiversity of things in the DC overall multiverse.
Yeah, I can't wait till the Marvel zombies come out and go, oh, look at DC copying Marvel with alternates or whatever, when DC was the one that did it first. But this all does kick off with an all-in special, which is it's Superman versus Darkseid. It doesn't get more classic DC than that. Let's hear the guys tell us about it.
And that's one of the things, like right now we're in the middle of this awesome Absolute Power event with Mark Waid and Dan Mora, and they're totally killing it. Awesome storytelling there. It actually ends with some really big moments for the DCU. And that's where we start picking things up with All In #1 in October. It's going to be a flip book. Scott and I co-wrote all of it, but it's a flip book where one side is being done by Daniel Sampere, who is awesome, who I did Dark Crisis with. He's killing it on Wonder Woman. And the other side is being done by Wes Craig, who is an awesome, awesome artist. And we're really excited. When you guys see the pages for this, it's going to blow your mind. Now, on the Daniel Sampere side, that side is going to focus on what is going on in the current DCU post-Absolute Power. And you're going to get to see a lot of this through the eyes of Superman. You're going to see some teases of the new storylines that are coming up. But it's all with Superman. The other side of the story is all through the point of view of Darkseid.
So let's talk real quick about the DC side that's through the eyes of Superman. We know Mark Waid is a giant Superman fan. We know Superman's his favorite character. There's rumors he's finally going to get a chance to be on a Superman title. Joshua Williamson said he's going to say he's still on the regular Superman title. And rumors are Jason Aaron's on the absolute Superman. So what does that leave? I won't say, but he probably can figure it out. So I have a feeling when it comes to this side of things, the side of the flip book that Daniel Sampere's drawing, the side that's focused on Superman energy, if you will, Superman tone, Mark Waid's probably going to have even though he didn't write it, probably going to have a lot of input. We know, he told us when he was on the show last time, that he is getting to call the shots on a lot of things that happen in the mainstream DC universe post Absolute Power. So, knowing he said, and I knew that before I knew anything about this All In, because again, he told me that. And now hearing that so much of what's happening in the DCU, the main DCU going forward, sounds like it's being driven by Superman. Well, that makes a heck of a lot of sense, wouldn't you say, Rocky?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. And there's a lot of history if you're into the history of the editorial history of DC Comics. Scott Snyder, I mean, he had his own hopes and dreams and plans at one point coming out of Death Metal, but then we had the fiasco with Dan Didio leaving and all the corporate shenanigans. And one thing that Scott Snyder's always had is a lot of passion, and he's just riddled with ideas. You and I have reviewed a lot of his independent work, which has been printed by Dark Horse and others, and he's just phenomenal. And part of me almost, I'm going to miss a lot of his indie work. I hope he still continues to do some of that. But Scott Snyder, I think he's a leader too. He's a teacher. He teaches other people how to write comics. I believe it was Tinian is one of his one of his students at one point. So this guy knows how to teach and he knows how to write. And that old expression that those who don't know teach. No, that doesn't apply to Scott Snyder. The guy knows what he's doing. He's a legend on Batman, and he's coming back on Batman. And it's very interesting that Williamson talked about Snyder on the flip side writing the Darkseid tale in that All-In special, and the writer and the artist is Wes Craig. And it's interesting because Wes Craig, I'm only familiar with him. I had to Google it. I've read Kea and Deadly Class, and he's the artist on those. I have to admit, I I have a, it's an odd choice as an artist for a Darkseid centered story, but in a weird kind of way, it's an eclectic sort of choice, and I think it might fit. So I'm really curious to see how Wes Craig's pencils are going to convey that darker aspect of a sort of a Darkseid energy-filled universe. So very interesting artistic choice on the part of Snyder there, and so I'm really looking forward to that aspect of just another reason to get excited for this this new DC venture.
Yeah, I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think if you're looking at it, if you're watching this on YouTube, everybody, they've got this all-in promo piece that they put out, which is really interesting, right? Darkseid's Omega symbol in the middle. You got the mainstream DC universe characters on the right. You got the Absolute on the left, and we'll talk more about this later. But I think that version of Superman with the floppy hair, the Absolute version, I think that's Wes Craig art. So yeah, going to be interesting to see how his art plays out for the Darkseid story.
This special, what it really does is it reintroduces Darkseid as sort of who he should be, right? The greatest villain in the DCU, the end of all things, and there have been some amazing stories about him, but what we kind of came up with, along with a bunch of great creators, Mark Waid and everybody else kind of working on the lead up to it, is that during the events of Absolute Power, unbeknownst to the superheroes, Darkseid starts to realize that something has always been missing. He senses something in a special moment during Absolute Power that we don't want to spoil.
Just real quick, one thing I want to say about this. This feels so classic DC to me. Something they haven't done in a long time. Wait, there's something that's happening in an event that then sparks something else happening later on, which leads to another story. The events that have, and frankly they haven't been very good, we've been a little critical of them, from Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths to Lazarus Planet and Night Terrors or whatever. It's jumping from one event to another. There's not really any connective tissue. They felt siloed, and the quality hasn't been there. This is getting back to that idea that everything is connected and one thing leads to another. I really like that.
Yeah, I agree, and I particularly love the emphasis on Darkseid being the kick-ass, the #1 villain of the DC universe. He's pure evil. That's how he ought to be written, and just straight, pure Darkseid evil. I absolutely love it, especially flowing out of Dark Crisis, where the Dark Army was such a disappointment, and they were all conglomerated and made. They felt less than what they were, the villainy in the DC universe. To go back to the classical villain of Darkseid, excellent choice.
Yeah, and I've got to admit, I'm very curious to find out what this is that Darkseid discovers that leads basically to this all-in initiative. Can't wait to find out.
Always been missing. He senses something in a special moment during Absolute Power that we don't want to spoil, but he senses something has changed. And once he realizes this, it sets him off on a quest that's going to bring him into direct conflict with this new Justice League that Superman is setting up, this more robust Justice
League coming back.
And the collision between those two forces will reshape the DC cosmology in a brand new way, in a radical way, in a way that we're really excited about. And in the midst of that, it will create, one thing it creates is a dangerous, wild new planet, a new DC universe, where we've invited in some of the biggest names in comics and some rising stars to reinvent the characters in personal and passionate and daring ways, all in one shared space, and as part of a bigger story that we'll be telling over the course of the next few years. That's the thing to understand. A great initiative, it launches begins with a story, and that story creates a driving force for the company for years to come. And
so new planet, new universe, chaotic, coming out of Darkseid's conflict with the returned Justice League. Again, that's a cool idea. I have no idea how you do it, how you make it make sense or whatever. But clearly he's talking about the absolute universe. Now, things that have come out and whatever, I said on our weekly DC Spotlight that's over on Rocky's YouTube channel, Comic Space Boom ! If you're looking for it, that one of the things about the Ultimate line, because that's where everybody goes. That's where everybody's brain goes if you're a comic book reader. Marvel has had Ultimate Comics twice, Ultimate line or Ultimate Universe twice. It's been very successful both times. The second time is currently right now. They're just in the midst of it. It's not even a year old yet. Last time they launched it with Ultimate Spider-Man, really the comic that really made Brian Bendis a superstar. And what I talked about was basically when they did that, it was Marvel simplifying the storylines and the characters so they could be introduced easily to a new generation. doesn't feel like DC, from what we know of the Absolute line, is doing that. It feels, if anything, very complicated. Now that we know it's tied in with Darkseid, again, you're going to have to, I think, have a little bit of knowledge, or maybe have to is the wrong word, but I think you'll be rewarded reading the Absolute Absolute Universe comics. If you know more about Darkseid, if you have some DC knowledge, it'll probably be better. But I do think that, all the creators that have been announced or that are rumored to be involved in those are veteran creators that are really, really strong writers. So I think it'll be new reader friendly as well. But very interesting that they're not choosing to have it completely separate. The Absolute line will be part of the DC multiverse, it sounds like. Which Marvel, they were completely separate at first, and then, like all comic book companies, eventually cross over, and then the Ultimate Universe got absorbed by the regular mainstream Marvel Universe with Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars, and now even the new Ultimate Universe that's going on now, we know is connected in some way. So, anything to add about the beginnings or the origins that were being hinted at here for the Absolute Universe, Rocky?
Well, Scott Snyder is going to get, and he's just about to say some additional information, but I will add before he says it that DC is wisely making it, I think, as new reader friendly as possible by making your choice very binary. You're going to have Darkseid energy versus that leads to the creation of a universe, and you have Superman energy, and he even references Doomsday Clock for longtime readers, but new readers won't need to know that. All you need to know is Darkseid bad, Superman good, and in this all-in universe, they have a slight disadvantage because they're a new Justice League in a Darkseid universe where they have to be a little bit tougher and a little bit more grittier, and that's kind of cool. So that explains the more radical versions versus the mainstream versions. That's what I love, and at least that's what Snyder seems to be hinted at.
Yeah, Batman's large with a giant bat symbol on his chest. Superman's got some emo hair, and Wonder Woman's all tatted up with the biggest broadsword I've ever seen. So. Yeah,
and riding almost like a strange, like an insect creature of some kind. Some of the pictures, it's pretty cool. I mean, look, it's definitely got me. It's raising my eyebrows anyway. I have to say that.
And a great initiative. It launches begins with a story, and that story creates, a driving force for the company for years to come. And that's what we're trying to do here. This story about the kind of collision between Darkseid, the Justice League, and what that engenders is going to be something that's going to shape the DC Universe for quite a while.
And that's one of the things that's really important about this initiative is that even though we have these two worlds, we're telling one big meta story. And part of that new world is the Absolute world. And so, Scott, let's talk about the Absolute world a bit, and let's talk about your book, Absolute Batman.
Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun architecting all this stuff with you and everybody else, but one part of it is this is the Absolute Universe. So the Absolute Universe, what is it? Without giving too much away, because you've got to pick up the special to see how it's created. If the main universe is sort of predicated on Superman energy, right, and the sort of metaverse concept that was introduced before in Doomsday Clock and elsewhere, then this universe is kind of founded on Darkseid energy. Now, Darkseid energy, the Omega Beams, they zigzag, they're chaotic, they're dangerous, they're wild, and that's the spirit of this universe. In this universe, the heroes come up in ways that make them underdogs. They have a lot less of the comforts and things that they have in the main universe. Without spoiling things in each of the books, they have to be tougher, they have to be more resourceful, they've got to shine brighter, and it makes them more badass, and it's fun. It's two universes, one prophecy. So we've invited in a lot of people that want to embrace that spirit, and they're going to blow you away with the takes that they've created for these characters, for Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and on and on. We can't wait for you to see what we came up with.
Yeah, so nothing announced yet. There's that insect, if you're watching this on YouTube, that Rocky was talking about, except we know Snyder's on Batman. The rumor is it's Jason Aaron on the Absolute Superman title, writing it with Rafa Sandoval on art, and then Hayden Sherman on art for Wonder Woman. Again, this is rumored, nothing's been confirmed, I don't know for sure, but Kelly Thompson as the writer, which I wasn't the hugest fan of Jason Aaron's Action Comics arc that we did, but it was well put together. It just wasn't my favorite. It was Bizarro. It's just not a villain I really like. But I still, Jason Aaron's super talented, for sure. So I'm very curious to see, especially when it's more of a clean slate for the Superman version he gets to write. And Kelly Thompson's one of my favorite writers. Like her as like writing a badass Wonder Woman. Like think of her run on Captain Marvel, which was excellent, but dial it up with kind of more grit and you know, more badassery. Yeah, if those are the three that are kicking this off, and 100%, there's more Absolute titles to come, and maybe we can give our wish list later of Absolute titles we'd like to see. But yeah, I mean that's a strong lineup to launch the Absolute line, wouldn't you say, Rocky?
Absolutely, and a phrase that Snyder stated that really entices me. He said, 2 universes, 1 prophecy. Makes me wonder, what is this prophecy?
Yeah.
Will this so-called prophecy be indicated in the All-In special, or will it be something that we'll have to guess as these 2 new universes sort of evolve moving forward after October 2024? It's really, like I said, it's... You know, they had my curiosity, but now they have my attention, as the phrase goes, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I certainly, I echo your sentiments about the creative team on Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. The one that I want, I have the most hope for, because she's never, in my view, been particularly an exciting a character, is Wonder Woman. I think this is the time that, you know, I hope this is the time where Wonder Woman finally gets written. Wonder Woman needs to be, I'm going to just say it, radically redefined. And I fear that maybe she won't be, but I hope if ever there was an opportunity to radically redefine Wonder Woman, it's now. But I can talk more about that later.
Yeah, it's so interesting. That stuck out to me as well, you know, 2 worlds, 1 prophecy. Because remember, there's only one DC multiverse, right? So multiple iterations of a lot of these characters, but there's only one Darkseid, which... Again, it goes back to something Rocky was saying earlier about how he needs to be more badass. He needs to be more of a threat. He should be far and away the biggest villain, the biggest threat, the most formidable antagonist in the DCU, and he doesn't always come across that way.
Yeah. When you guys see Nigiraga's art on Absolute Batman, it is going to blow your mind. It is primal. This is not the Batman you know. He is a beast, and it's really, really exciting. And one of the things that we've been talking about, you might have heard us say Superman a lot. And Superman is going to be a really important part of the stories moving forward past All In. And I am still going to be writing Superman. I'll be writing the main Superman title. And now I'll be joined by Dan Mora, the artist, one of the best artists at DC, will come in and play with me on Superman for a while. And we're going to be doing some really big new stories in Superman. One of the things is we're going to be introducing a new Superwoman. That'll be a big mystery of who the new Superwoman is and how she got her powers. But also we're going to have the return of Doomsday. Yeah. One of my favorite comics of all time is Death of Superman. And getting to play with Doomsday and doing some really cool big action sequences of Doomsday is very, very exciting. And there's going to be one of the biggest stories I've ever done at DC will be in the Superman title.
So thoughts on that? New Superwoman, Doomsday coming back?
Yeah, this is the first one that made me sort of like go, this is the one where I sincerely hope that I'm wrong, but, you know, because I'm less excited about that. But I want to say this, that Joshua Williamson, he's been hit and miss with me. The one thing that he's consistently hit out of the park for me is his run on Superman. So he is somebody that I have faith. He has turned the tide on me. I've been very critical of him on various titles, but his Superman title has really impressed me. When I think of a Superwoman, I think that we have a very poorly developed Supergirl in the mainstream DC universe. We got a Supergirl movie that's going to be coming out in the next 2 or 3 years. Why don't we have some emphasis on Supergirl? We already had a redefined Power Girl under Leigh Williams, and now we're going to muddy the waters even further by having a brand new Superwoman. My question is why? I just don't see why, especially moving into a revitalized movie slate for DC, and I realize that the movies are different than the comics. I understand that, but I just thought it was a very curious choice, and the one thing they just don't need to do. We don't need a Superwoman. We've had it before. Lana Lang's been Superwoman in the past. Lois Lane's been Superwoman in the past. We got Power Girl. We got a poorly used Supergirl. We got, I think, an overly large Superman family to begin with, and yet now we're going to get another super member of the super family. I just, I choose to have faith in Joshua Williamson, but that one I had made me sort of like go, I'm not sure. But what do you think of that?
Yeah, mixed feelings. I kind of wish we'd gotten the original Superwoman story that Phil Jimenez had planned instead of the complete debacle that we got. And I agree with you. in terms of having too many, and they can't even differentiate between Power Girl and Supergirl as much as they try. So yeah, just wonder if this is not redundant. But the other part of it is, I do the thing that he said that does intrigue me though is she's going to be introduced and it's going to be a mystery. I like the idea of a mystery, but I don't know. Call her something else. Give her a different costume. Doesn't have to be Superwoman. So anyway, but if the story's good, he can win me over for sure.
One of the things, along with doing Superman, is, like Scott said earlier, we're going to be doing a lot of new stories starting in October. There'll be a bunch of jumping on points across the entire line. For me, when I came back to DC with Rebirth and I was working on Flash, I felt like I was a new kid. And one of the best parts of the last few years has been watching all of these new talent, new creators coming into the DCU. And one of the things that's the best part about doing a new initiative is that what I've learned is that initiatives create opportunities. And it's been really awesome watching a lot of these new creators grab this opportunity and run with it and tell some really, really amazing stories. And so you're going to get a lot of new books, new creative teams, and new stories starting up in October.
The biggest thing we want to kind of communicate to you guys is this is not a retcon or a reboot or something like that. It's a celebration and expansion of the great storytelling that's been happening at DC. What it is it's an invitation to jump in. What we were able to kind of do is create a story that in October will have every book starting a new arc. Some of them are continuing on the sort of storylines that they've been on, but it will be a jumping on point. Some of them will be brand new books over in the Absolute Universe. There'll be new books in the main universe. We're going to have brand new origin stories. From October on, everywhere you look at DC Comics will be a story beginning, a place to start. There'll be incentives for retailers that will reveal at San Diego. There'll be incentives for you guys that will reveal at San Diego. But the goal of this, like I said at the beginning of this, is All In is a rallying cry. It's saying comics are awesome. Comics have been awesome. Comics will always be awesome. It will be the place where you can tell the biggest and best stories with these characters ever. And what we want is to communicate to you that right now we're all in as a company. All the creators, all the editors, everybody has bought into this idea of let's all take our biggest swing together at one moment because we haven't done it in a while. Let's all launch our biggest stories, whether they're radical reinventions of the characters, whether they're continuing awesome legacy stories that are happening in the main DCU. Let's do all of it at once, all over the course of this period. We're all in. It's all in the books. It's all in the stores, and we're all in it together as fans and as creators and as retailers and everybody in the industry to say comics is awesome, and it always has been and it always will be, but this moment in particular is going to be more awesome than you can even imagine.
And like this right here, everything we're talking about, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Like this is just the beginning of what All In is and everything we're going to be talking to you about. There's going to be a lot of announcements this week. A lot of really cool stuff is going to be teased this week. And then we're going to get to San Diego Comic-Con, and there will be a lot of really, really great stuff at San Diego Comic-Con. We have a panel on Thursday at 12:45 at San Diego Comic-Con. You got to make sure you go to that. Like, there's a lot of really cool stuff that's going to be coming to DC in October. And it all starts with DC All In Special number 1.
Well, I gotta stop it. I want to say one thing. My favorite DC logo was like that early 2000s logo. It only hung around for a few years, and I think it was something with like the sneaker company that was similar to that, where they had to change it. And it sort of looks. I'm trying to get it to play. Let me just mute it, I guess, and I'll play and see if I can stop it at the right spot.
Yeah,
that
DC
right
shoes.
there. I love that. Yeah, I love that. It's not exactly because it doesn't have the circle and the swoosh and the stars, but I like that logo right there so much better than the current DC logo. Although the current DC logo is better than the one we had after the swoosh. That was like it was a D, and you like were peeled back the D and you saw part of a C. That logo was trash. I like this. I hope they go to this at least on the absolute titles, if not all the titles.
Yeah, I hope so too. It's interesting. He never said anything about the logos, but is that what the solicitations have suggested, that we're going to be getting?
I have no idea. It's just I liked this so much when it showed up in the video, it immediately caught my eye. Like, why does because if I go back just a little bit, right after he finishes talking,
yeah,
we get this logo.
Yeah.
which is the current logo. But then later, we get this. So it just made me wonder, like, could we be getting a new logo? Well, let me. There's only like 20 seconds left, so let me go ahead and finish playing it out.
Okay.
Whoa, sorry. Let me turn the sound back on. That all-in trade dress as well. So, like you heard Josh say, there's going to be more stuff teased this week. So I did already get a press release, and it's under embargo. I can't say what's in it specifically, but I can tell you that tomorrow or Thursday, I guess maybe that's when you're watching this. There's going to be announcements of some of the new creative teams that we're going to see on Action Comics, on Detective Comics, because we know Ram V's run is coming to an end. We're going to find out who's on Wonder Woman. We're going to find out who's on Green Arrow. We're going to find out who's on the main Batman title. Some of them will be the same creative team. Some of them will be new. But I imagine we'll hear... So that should come out early tomorrow. There may be more news that comes out tomorrow, and then I imagine we'll get some stuff on Friday. Again, teasing... most of the information, most of what we're going to find out is going to be next week at San Diego Comic-Con. I guarantee at the DC All-In panel that Joshua Williamson mentioned, they're going to announce the creative teams for some books that we may not be aware of. Maybe they're absolute titles that we're not aware of, or just books that are going to continue. So, will we get a new team on the fly? I honestly don't see how Cy Spurrier can finish up his story. It's so convoluted. To restart in October with a fresh arc that leaves everything behind. Maybe it'll be a fresh arc that doesn't leave everything behind. But honestly, I don't care. If I never read any more of that story, it doesn't matter to me. Will Jeremy Adams still be on Green Lantern? It remains to be seen. And the reason that I bring those two up is because I think those two characters, Green Lantern and Flash, are the two characters most likely to have absolute titles. We have, again, heard just rumors that there will be an absolute Flash title. And I want to say it's Al Ewing that I've heard rumored attached to that. And then Dennis Camp on an absolute Martian Manhunter, which he's not the most popular character, so that seems like an interesting choice. But, again, he's not the most popular, so he doesn't have the most eyes. So most eyes on him. So it seems like you could do something even more out of the box with Martian Manhunter. You could get really subversive. That one might have me the most curious of anybody. But thoughts on any of that, Rocky? DC in their DC update on Twitter. This is on Twitter, so this is not isn't a spoiler. Jeremy Adams posted on Twitter that he says, "I wouldn't say Xermanico in my books." And my book, Green Lantern, is an entry point as much as a gigantic reset of the Green Lantern universe. And because DC has confirmed that the Green Lantern series will continue with their current creative team, along with Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, and Poison Ivy. And so those are the mainstream titles that will continue with their current creative teams, and which is, I suppose, not surprising. So I guess Cy Spurrier, that probably answers your question, Jace. He has as much time as he wants maybe to complete the Flash run. But I will say this. Here's the question that I pose. And I think we already know the answer, but here's what I hope. I hope that if you're an A-lister and you're coming to DC, I'm thinking if you're an A-lister, you want to be writing for the new all-in DC universe, don't you? Absolutely.
Because you want more you have a radical idea. You're going to be less, beholden to existing mainstream continuity. Not that that's necessarily a thing that DC cared about anymore anyway, but theoretically, continuity still exists in the mainstream DC universe. And so I'm wondering if, because Joshua Williamson stated that, there's a lot, everyone's excited and they have these new creative teams, but I hate to put it this way, but I want their best to be in the all-in. I kind of,
you mean absolute. everything's all in, mainstream and absolute. Or
okay, absolute. Sorry, I mean, but to go to the absolute, I want their best. I don't want to water down the absolute universe with a bunch of mediocre writers. Not the ones that have, and I don't need to name names, but I could. That just aren't good enough. That haven't made the grade and have been proven failures over the last 5 years. To put them in the absolute DC universe would be a mistake, and I hope they don't do that. There's no indication that they're going to do that, but I hope they don't start, handing out creative assignments for the absolute DC universe like Halloween candy, because otherwise that would defeat the purpose. Now, I realize that's a tough judgment call to make, but that's just my initial fears. But I guess we'll have to wait and see.
So I don't look at it that way. At some point, Tom King was new on Grayson, right? So anybody can be good. I don't particularly look at it that way, and I also don't think the creators do either. I don't think somebody who's a veteran creator who's made a name for themselves, they come over and you say, okay, which do you want? It might be that for their particular story idea, their particular pitch, that the mainstream DCU might work better for it, or the absolute universe might work better for it. I don't think they look at it that way of saying, okay, I'm going to limit myself or whatever. I mean, if you're a good enough writer, you should be able to make your story idea work in either universe. That might not always be the case, but I think it will. So when Brian Michael Bendis gets announced on 3 absolute titles, Rocky, we'll see if you're still singing the same tune. But I am glad to hear that Jeremy Adams is going to stay on Green Lantern. I'm also not surprised to hear that it's a giant reset, because they're sort of due for a reset right there. That's the story Jeremy's been telling. With the Guardians not there, the United Planet's calling the shots, but being a completely corrupt bureaucratic organization, and all the batteries having been destroyed. He's building up to a reset, so I'm really excited to hear about that. Less so about Cy Spurrier, but it is what it is. We can't always have everything we want. But I mentioned this earlier. I want your take. If you could pick 1 or 2 characters, because again, going off rumor, 3 we know for sure, the 3 big ones, right? Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. Almost surprised no Harley, absolute Harley. But then the rumored ones, Flash, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter. So outside of those, and setting aside Harley, because we'll get it at some point, and that might be right up your alley, because it would seem they could do more of a hardcore Harley like you like. But outside of those 7, let's say, if you had to pick 1 or 2 characters to give them an absolute title, what are you picking? Or it could be a team book if you want to see a team book, which I imagine maybe the second year they might think about doing some team books. But
I would love to see I mean, I'm going out here, but I would love to see a Young Justice absolute title. I think that would be real cool. Have the younger characters, even a bunch of merge some of the characters, somewhat radically different versions of the mainstream counterparts for Young Justice, and not necessarily legacy characters. I would love to see that, because one of the questions I have is, if in this absolute universe, which is more Darkseid energy, does it also have its own multiverse with its own different versions of heroes? And I mean, I think there's so many fascinating places that it could go in the absolute universe. I mean, not to mention, I mean, I think of Hawkman. I would love to see a Hawkman, absolute version of Hawkman. I mean, he's badass enough as it is in the mainstream. Radicalize that crazy bastard for in a Darkseid energy-filled universe. I mean, come on. I think that would just be amazing. And even heck, Plastic Man. I mean, wow, a radicalized Plastic Man. Maybe he's not quite as corny or funny. He's got less of a sense of humor in an absolute universe. I mean, and you mentioned Harley Quinn. I think Harley Quinn should be full bore evil in the absolute universe. I mean, none of this lovey-dovey LGBTQ lipstick lesbian nonsense. Enough of that. You make her hardcore, take her back to her darker roots, and have her be the reason that the Joker ends up have her Joker be her bitch. I mean, do something radical with Harley. I mean, that's what I want. And for Wonder Woman, I got to tell you, I want Wonder Woman. None of this nonsense that Wonder Woman thinks of kindness like a superpower. I don't want Wonder Woman supplicating with mercy and getting on her knees and being preachy on pontificating. No, I want her. I mean, fortunately, in the images for Wonder Woman, she's wielding a manga-sized sword. That is a very, very good sign. I want her swinging that sword first, asking questions later. My favorite iteration of Wonder Woman is when she snapped Maxwell Lord's neck. Why? Because if you can't cage an animal, you kill it. That's what it's all about. And I can see there's a time for mercy. But first and foremost, hit first, mercy second. And why not have Wonder Woman be that way in the apps universe?
I think the argument is, I think the argument would be, well, that's not Wonder Woman. I think a lot of people would say.
But I mean, if holding Snyder to his own word, I mean, it can be. Who says it isn't? And in fact, I would make the argument that in fact it is. Wonder Woman's just been written wrong and badly for decades. Again, I'm an outlier, and I realize, but I'm hopeful. She needs to be more, even if you're not going to go full radical Wonder Woman, she does need to be far more aggressive than she is, less talky, less preachy, less so soft-spoken, and more. She needs to be more physically violent. I'm sorry, she just does. And, make her more like Scarlet and, Kelly Thompson. I hope you're listening. There's a time and place for compassion and getting on your knees and supplicating yourself, and there's a time to kick ass. And I'm tired of the preachiness in Wonder Woman, and I'm tired of the fact that we haven't got a decent Wonder Woman story in far too long a time, with my apologies to Tom King.
Yeah, but my point is she's never been violence first. She's never been hit first and mercy later. She's literally never been that. That's what you want. I get that.
I know, but she's in her more interesting iterations. She has been more aggressive. She has been more aggressive. And again, I'm exaggerating because I'm passionate about this, and so I'm overstating my case. I don't want her to be like walking in about beating the hell out of people first impression.
So other than Wonder Woman Dead Earth, I can't think of any time. And again, I'm thinking mainstream Wonder Woman because that's all we've ever had.
Even New Frontier Wonder Woman. Give me a New Frontier type of personality Wonder Woman in the Absolute Universe, because even that's a little bit more, there's the door, spaceman. I mean, and also I hope that they shake up the relationship between the Trinity. Don't have it all. I mean, I don't want Absolute Wonder Woman to be, shopping with Superman for Absolute Batman's birthday or such nonsense. I mean, this is a darker universe. I want it to feel that way and look that way, and visually it looks that way already. And again, I'm happy with what I'm seeing so far and what I'm hearing. But I've been happy with first impressions before, only to be disappointed. So we'll see.
Yeah, Young Justice too. Again, probably no team books for a while, I would think. And then the other thing about Young Justice is they're sort of the sidekicks. They're the next generation. So I don't know that you would lean into that. Already, especially, Robin is basically a junior Batman. You got Kid Flash, who's a junior Flash, so.
Yeah. You're right. They'll probably do Titans first or something like that, and that's fine.
Yeah, I do like the Hawkman pick, though. That's a very good pick. For Plastic Man, it could work, but I would be shocked. And the only reason I would be shocked is because it's already been announced that we're getting a Black Label Plastic Man book that's being written by Christopher Cantwell that's going to lean into the body horror type stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It kind of seems like if we're going dark with Plastic Man, that's the direction you take. And we already have the Cantwell book coming out. So for me, I have a couple in mind. One might surprise people. Aquaman, who's not one of my favorite characters, but you want to talk about making somebody a little more formidable. Like the most popular time for Aquaman ever was in the 90s, actually, when Peter David was writing it, and he had the hook for a hand, and he was a little darker, a little edgier, like a lot of characters were in the 90s. But that was when he was probably at his most fearsome. But after that run ended, it went back to the same old jokes. So here's a guy that talks to fish. They make the jokes in the movies. Even Jeff Johns, being very meta in the issue number 1 of the New 52 Aquaman, referenced how he was kind of being made fun of. The other one that I would like, again, kind of obscure, but can we go back to the classic Ronnie Raymond, Martin Stein Firestorm and get a Firestorm absolute? That would be really cool. There are other favorite characters that I have, like Ted Kord Blue Beetle and Blue Devil, but just sort of the aesthetic of those just doesn't really fit. I don't think I'd want a Blue Devil in the Absolute universe because I like the humor and the lighter feel of that story, so I just don't think it works. Same with the old school Ted Kord Blue Beetle title from the mid '80s. I think my Aquaman in the right hands and Firestorm again because they haven't been done. One of the last, we'll wind this down here. We've been talking for a while, but one of the last things that I want to point out when, I mentioned looking at this graphic for All In and how you have the main universe heroes on one side, and then you have the Absolute Universe heroes on the other. I will almost guarantee you, I would be willing to put a substantial amount of money down that you're going to see this image all over San Diego, but you're going to see it start to fill in behind those Absolute characters. Like, look at how many, like, if you just were going to do the three main trinity of Absolute, then why wouldn't you just contrast it on the other side, balance it out, if you will, with the trinity of the main universe? But instead, we see Green Lantern, we see Booster Gold, we see, who's that, Starfire, and Flash. So,
and
Zatanna. So you would think, I'm kind of blocking Zatanna with my giant head. But yeah, I guarantee we're going to see more characters on the Absolute side added in probably when their series get announced as kind of the second wave of Absolute, just so it'll look more balanced. Because when you look at it right now, doesn't it look very unbalanced?
And that's probably by design, as you said.
Yeah.
They want to maybe keep some of the other characters under wraps.
Yep.
They don't want to reveal it all at once, and that's fine by me. I love being surprised, and I'm excited. Like I'm like I said, it's
you spoiled it earlier. You said you're already all in.
That's right. Sorry, Jace, but I am all in. You betcha. But
yeah, so it's going to be it's hard for me to say that I'm not going to be all in. Honestly, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. Maybe that's just a prep for San Diego. Say, oh man, I'm going to go all in. Be easier for me to, when it gets closer, when San Diego's behind me, and I can kind of put it in the rear view with all the work I've got to do, to say that I'm going to be all in on this. But here's the thing, right? Like, I'm going to go to San Diego. I'm going to sit down with some of those creators. I'm going to interview some of them. I'll probably talk to all of them at one point or another. Some of it will be off the record. I'll just run into them at the bar or whatever on the show floor and talk to them. And I'll be able to tell. I've been doing this long enough. I'll be able to tell. Regardless of what their actual words are, I'll be able to tell if they're truly all in, if they're truly excited about this, if this is everything they hoped it would be. Because remember, a lot of promises were made for New 52, and then the editorial hand was heavy, and it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. So hopefully we're not going to have a repeat of that. And when creators are happy and having fun creating stories, that's when we get the best stories. And at the end of the day, I just want good stories. DC will get a bump in sales. They will get people who are lapsed DC fans that have stopped reading DC books or stopped reading comics altogether, that will come back to try this out, and they'll get other fans that are reading independent or reading Marvel or whatever that will be willing to try this out. So if the stories are good, that's how you retain readership. That's how you get people talking. That's how you get word of mouth. So I'm going to say that I'm cautiously all in, and ask me after San Diego Comic-Con, and I'll give you a more concrete answer. I know I'm cheating in a way, but fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So, any last thoughts there, Rocky?
Other than I've already said it that I'm all in. I'm very optimistic. I I think we're getting the best of both worlds here, at least in theory. Hopefully the reality will reflect the theory, because we've got some existing titles with the same creative teams that are going to be continuing with Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Jeremy Adams and Green Lantern, Flash, and Poison Ivy. Those are 6 titles that I think mainstream have been consistently decent, notwithstanding our issues with Flash. And with this new what we've talked about here with the Absolute DC Universe. I love the idea of Darkseid coming back in full glory. I think that the future looks dark in the brightest possible way for DC come October.
Yeah, you mentioned Cy Spurrier, made me think of his Hellblazer book. If there's any book that's coming out right now that could already be set in the Absolute Universe, it's his Dead in America. So if they do a Hellblazer or Constantine title in the Absolute Universe, yeah, my vote's for Cy Spurrier for that, 100%. Okay, that's going to do it, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. We appreciate you joining us as always. Don't forget to head over to Comic Space Boom ! On YouTube and subscribe. Ring the notification bell. That way you know when our DC Spotlights come out every week. They come out on Tuesdays now, Wednesdays now, because the DC books come out on Wednesdays. If you're listening to us audio only, still head over to YouTube and subscribe. If you want to subscribe to the Comic Source YouTube, just do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. And then, of course, our thousands and thousands of past audio-only episodes are available wherever you get your podcasts, whatever platform or podcast app you prefer. So be sure you're following both those channels, both those Comic Source channels, and the Comic Source on social media for all the San Diego Comic-Con convention coverage that's coming up next week. So leave some comments below, everybody. Let us know what your thoughts are on DC All In. Are you all in? Are you excited for the Absolute Universe? And let us know what characters you would like to see get their own titles in the Absolute Universe. I'm curious what characters that we haven't thought of that would be a good fit. So that's going to do it for this episode. We appreciate the support as always, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.